Hi there, and welcome to this webinar, where we're going to discover how to take back control of your anxiety. My name's David Donahue, anxiety coach, from my business, The Eyes of Horus. Now, this webinar is for you if you are really frustrated with your anxiety. I know that anxiety is something that most people get at some stage in their life. For some people, it's not really very much of a problem. For others, and people I've worked with, I know how frustrated you can be with your anxiety. If you feel like your anxiety has taken over your life, your work, the things that you want to be able to do, if you feel like you're losing the control of your anxiety, then this webinar is for you. If you have tried to be able to get control of your anxiety, but found that it's just not happening, you're just not getting back in control, and what you've done hasn't worked, or you just don't know how, and that you're wanting to take back control, this webinar is for you. Because I'm interested in helping you if you're committed to doing what you can to take back control of your anxiety. Because you see, in this webinar, we're going to be looking at some tips on what you can actually do. And if you want to be able to get the most out of this, it is about you doing things, and doing things differently probably than you've done before. So if you're willing and wanting to really take action and take back control of your anxiety, then this webinar is for you. What led me to having this webinar was originally back in the 1980s, I had claustrophobia and panic. If I got in a lift, then if others got in, I'd get out. I'd rush out, really. I'd feel embarrassed, but I knew that the anxiety, the nervousness was so strong, it overrode the embarrassment. Then in 1994, I had the chance of achieving a dream of going inside the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So there I was in Egypt, looking up at the entrance to the Great Pyramid. You see, it's not on the ground, it's actually several steps up. And my anxiety took control. It controlled me rather than me having control. And as a consequence, it won out, and I did not go into the Great Pyramid. I still haven't achieved that goal, but one day I will be going back to Egypt and going into the Great Pyramid now that I've got rid of my claustrophobia. And so I searched for a solution to overcome that anxiety, not just to cope, but really to gain mastery and to overcome that anxiety. Finally, I found a solution when I learned hypnotherapy. And the solution included past life regression, or regression in my case, which challenged my beliefs, and it probably challenges yours also. It's not about whether you believe in past lives or not. One of the things that's important is to recognize that what I learned was that the anxiety I had a decision point, a point in time that caused me to have that anxiety. People I've worked with, sometimes it's one point, sometimes there's several points, but there is always a cause for anxiety. And to take back control of anxiety doesn't mean we need to have an understanding of that cause, because part of that is a little bit further down the track, and I'll be getting onto a bit more about what else you can do besides these tips later on in the webinar. However, these tips are the first steps that I help people to do, because without doing these, you find you don't take back control. And if you don't take back control, it's actually harder to try and gain mastery over your anxiety. And so now I've developed programs that help others to overcome their fears, their phobias, their anxiety. And I do it using conversational hypnosis. In other words, there's not deep hypnosis. It's more conversational. It's more at what we call the alpha level. I use NLP, how the mind works, and a thing around matrix re-imprinting, which is how we use a regression technique to help to change that decision. Because that's what I did. I changed the decision that happened in that time, in that life. As a result, I got rid of my claustrophobia. So by going into that past life and locating the cause, I was finally able to, well, I thought finally able to overcome my anxiety. The first time I went in, before I learned hypnosis, I was able to get some hypnotherapy to go in, and I learned that I could cope because I found that I had the ability to move my head, my toes, in the particular event that occurred. And so I would use that if I got in a lift, and I could stay in the lift. But boy, I'll tell you what, I still felt the anxiety. It just allowed me to cope. It meant that rather than running away, I knew that the anxiety was there, and I thought, no, I need more. I need to do more. So in learning hypnosis and NLP, what I was able to do was to get in and change that decision that I mentioned a few moments ago. And by changing the fear decision using hypnosis, NLP, matrix reprinting, it helps you to create new beliefs, new mindsets, and as a result, new behaviors, non-anxious behaviors. The other thing I introduced was the idea of changing fear and bringing in curiosity. You see, curiosity is something that says, I wonder what's going to happen here. I wonder what would happen if I did this. And anxiety actually stops you from going forward. Curiosity helps you to move forward. And so I developed an anxiety program with strategies and actions that help you to understand what anxiety is, what it means for you. You see, in one way, I see that anxiety in itself is good. But also anxiety is not an emotion. Anxiety is just a term. When we understand it, we begin to stop fearing it. And so you learn how to deal with the anxiety. And you create mental and emotional changes so that as a consequence, you can then create new behaviors so you can live a life without an impact of anxiety. And so to do this, I help you to create changes using your mind and your spirit. Now, one of the reasons why I want to be able to help people is I have a mission. And my mission is to try to get everybody who is impacted a lot by anxiety to stop accepting that they just have to cope with it. Instead, what I want you to do is to recognize that you can overcome it. Now, Beyond Blue, from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, have the statistics which says that anxiety is the most common mental health condition in Australia. And on average, 1 in 4 people will experience anxiety throughout their life. Now, this isn't just the normal anxiety. This is where it actually impacts you in some way so that you're not able to do what you want to do, whether it's at work and not being able to get up in front of a team and present, whether it's at a conference and presenting, whether it's in the social environment and finding that you're not going in socially because you just feel that anxiousness when you think about it, or whether it happens to be that you're stuck at home and you just feel like you just can't get outside. So that anxiety can hit in many different ways, which is part of the reason why the term anxiety is not a great term, because anxiety is common. The problem is, what does it actually mean? But Beyond Blue identifies, and they state that the sooner that people with anxiety get support and get help, the more likely they are to recover. And that's from their fact sheets. And so, since so many people around the world, and I'm more focused in Australia, and especially in Australia, have anxiety, the problem is when people have lost control of their anxiety. And what I want to do is help you to get back control, to take that control back from your anxiety so that you are consciously more in control of it. And that's the first stage to being able to really gain mastery over your anxiety and to overcome it. And so in a moment, what we're going to do is look at several steps. The first step is what one word you need to ask yourself to stop running away from your anxiety. Because by asking this word, you begin to recognize that, the anxiety is telling me something. And so it's like you think, I want to know something about this. So rather than running away, I no longer need to run away. The second step is around confidently dominating your anxiety. And there's actually two parts to that. And in that way, we're going to be looking at, again, what you need to do. And often the things that I'm getting you to do with these tips are different from what most people know to do. But in my case, I had anxiety. Not only claustrophobia, I had fear of heights, panic attacks, and so I know what it was like. And so I know that what I had to do to overcome it was different from what most people were telling me, because what most people told me only allowed me to cope. And if I want to overcome it, which is what I want to do, you have to do other things. And so step 3 will be what specific action you need to do so you can finally take back control of your anxiety. So the word that you ask yourself that will stop you from running away from your anxiety is why. That's it. Why? You see, most people do not ask why. There was a book written many years ago called The Aladdin Factor. And the basis of this was around helping people to understand the necessity of asking why. Because a lot of people just accept things as they are. When I first started to look around at overcoming my anxiety, people would say, just breathe. You'll be fine, just breathe. What I didn't do is ask, well, anxiety, why are you there? What are you trying to tell me? Because by not asking why, the alternative was to want to just run away. And I don't know if you've ever gone out running, but when you go out running and you've been running for a little while and the heart's beating, just like when we have anxiety, then it's really hard to breathe. So the advice I was being given didn't help because I was focusing on running rather than stopping and asking why. Now, in asking why, you begin to understand that you can ask your anxiety and talk to it. The next thing, though, is, and I'm going to go back over these steps a bit more soon so you understand how they all link together, because they do. When you want to dominate your anxiety, the second thing that you need to be able to do is what's called the power pose. You see, Amy Cuddy, who spoke at the TED Talk in 2012, and she's a social psychologist, talks about how your body language shapes who you are. From an NLP perspective, we also know that your physiology will impact your mental and emotional states. In other words, putting it in simple terms, if you change the way you feel, if you change the way that you stand, for example, and you stand tall rather than bent over, your mental state and your emotional state has to change. And so Amy, in her talk, detailed the effects of what's called power posing. And it's based on research by herself and other scientists. So on the slides, you'll notice Wonder Woman up in the background. Now, Wonder Woman, Superman, Superwoman, Supergirl, I think Batman, a lot of the superheroes we have use what's called the power pose. which is fists on the hips, arms out, shoulders back, head up. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're sitting down, if it's possible, stand up now. And as you do, as you're listening to me, put your hands on your hips and then really push your hands into your hips so that you tighten your arms. Then look forward with your shoulders slightly back. Separate your feet so that you're balanced, because a lot of this is about being balanced. You see, by being balanced, you can then start to feel balanced. A lot of people don't understand that, but it's been proven through research that you may feel out of balance because you are not standing balanced. But if you stand balanced, imagining that you're on the middle of a seesaw, it's balanced in the middle, but it wants to go one way up or down. Then if you're standing on the middle across the mid-piece of the seesaw, you can actually balance it. So by having your feet apart, shoulders back, then you find that you feel more balanced. So if you're ready, you can sit back down again, or you can stand in that power pose for a bit longer if you want, because the power stance helps you to be feeling more powerful and confident. Because the power posing effects replicate in at least 9 published studies and at least 4 unpublished studies that adopting expansive poses increases the person's feelings of power and confidence. So research has looked into this and shown that this is how it works. Now, if you then stand or sit and you bring your shoulders forward and you put your head down a bit, you'll find you don't quite feel as powerful, you don't feel as confident. But if you put your head up, shoulders back, you find that as you do that, then you begin to feel more power. And as a consequence, it can bring in more confidence. Now, the second part of dominating your anxiety, the second action, is to see the anxious you as another person in a mirror. So imagine for a moment there's a mirror in front of you, and maybe as you're sitting there, there is a mirror there. Imagine looking in that mirror and you see yourself. Now, I remember a cartoon years ago where I think it was a fox fox character was looking into the mirror, and then the character or the image in the mirror changed and started to talk back to him. And that's sort of what we're going to be getting you to imagine, is to imagine that you're looking in the mirror and you see the anxious you in the mirror. So that you, that person outside the mirror, you can stand in your power pose, or you can just sit there as in the diagram and the picture on the slide, and you start to talk to that person in the mirror. You see, by doing this is known as mirror work. It's been around for a number of years, and it's been used as ways to help people to really start to come to terms with problems that they have in their life. But we're going to use this a little bit differently to what most other psychological systems have used it. And that's really where we get into step 3. Step 3 is about taking control of your anxiety by talking with your anxiety with compassion. As if there's like a therapist or a coach sitting with you and being compassionate, listening to you, providing you with advice. And so how do we do this? We now combine steps 1 and 2 into step 3. We know step 1 was about asking why. So instead of running away, we start to ask why. And you can actually ask why multiple times. And in asking why, you're going to look and see yourself in a mirror. Now, you can do this physically by looking in a mirror, or if you're able to visualize, you can shut your eyes and imagine seeing yourself and having the mirror there and seeing yourself in the mirror. And so what you do is you imagine that you in the mirror is the anxious you. And you want to find out, why are you anxious? And so you ask the question, why? But you don't ask it in an incriminating way of saying, well, why are you anxious? You ask it in a compassionate way, like a bit of curiosity. Why? Why are you anxious? And if I looked at it in the terms of what I had at that time when I was at the base of the pyramid, looking up, and if I said to myself at that time, which of course I didn't know these techniques back then, and if I had have known them, then maybe I might have been able to go into the pyramid. But anyway, so if I was there and I imagined myself standing in the mirror, then I could ask myself, why are you anxious? And it might have come back and said, well, because I'm going to go into a dark area that I don't know. So then I can ask, well, why? Is that a problem? And the idea is, I don't know if I'll be able to get out because I have to bend over and it might be a tight spot. And why is that a problem? Well, if I can't get out in a tight spot, then I might be stuck and I'll die. So by asking why, I'm starting to understand what my anxiety is fearful of. And then I can start to answer it by talking to it and saying, well, other people have gone in and they come out. There is a light, and yes, it might be in a bit of darkness, but imagine if you're walking along and you just closed your eyes. It's dark. You can still be aware. So you know that it's not about darkness. It's about knowing when the light's there and being able to use the light. And also you're going in with other people and they're fine too. And the idea is, okay, so what if I get in and I start to become panicky? Well, then I can say, well, that's when you focus on simply being able to breathe. You see, there's air going in and out of that entrance. So there's always oxygen. You can always breathe. So you might for a moment just need to stop. Just take a slow, deep breath in and just breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And so by doing that, what happens is you start to recognize that you're taking back control of your anxiety. No longer is it controlling you. You've spoken to it. It's now comfortable that you've spoken to it and that you're listening to it, because that's what it wants you to do. It wants you to listen to it, to take notice. For other people I know who have some anxiety about getting up and presenting, it's the same thing. Before you get up, the idea is to stop and say, well, why? Why are you feeling anxious? Oh, I might forget my words. And then you say, well, have you practiced? Yes, I have. Do you remember things anyway? Yes, I do. So is there any reason why you might forget? Or there's all those people looking at me. And then one of the suggestions I do when I help people to learn how to present better is I say, well, imagine rather than speaking to the whole crowd, imagine just speaking to one person. Can you speak to one person? Yeah, I can speak to one person, says the anxious you. Well, in that case, when you're up there, just look at one person and talk to them. And then all of a sudden you learn through ways of being able to present better that you're focusing on the things that you can actually do. And it works out so much better for you. And so really, if you want to take back control of your anxiety, there are the actions. You need to be able to stand in your power pose first. Because as you stand in your power pose, you realize that you are confident, you are powerful. When you're talking to yourself and you see your anxious you in the mirror and you stand in your power pose, then it means the anxious you changes. So you ask you in the mirror, why are you impacting me? What do you want me to know? And effectively, you just keep talking to yourself in the mirror to find the answers. And you keep repeating, looking at yourself in the mirror, asking the questions and talking to yourself until you start to understand what's going on and the anxious you feels listened to. And once it does that, then it no longer takes control of you. Instead, you now have taken back control. And so step 1 is to stop your anxiety with the why. 2 is the power pose, to dominate and to see yourself in the mirror. And then the 3rd is really putting it all together and talking to yourself in the mirror, feeling confident and feeling powerful. Because then what happens is you start having the control. So hopefully I've given you some valuable information, yes? And so when you leave this webinar, you've now got a lot of great information and actions that you can do right now, right? And if you haven't done those actions before, it can feel a little bit overwhelming, right? So I know you want to be able to reduce that overwhelm. And so there is other things that you can do. But what are they? Well, I remembered when I mastered my anxiety after I'd finally overcome it in 2004, that I needed time. I needed to do things and learn the new behaviors. And so it does take time. Having a step-by-step process to master anxiety does also make it easier to be able to gain control. Because even with the 3 steps we've already covered, you may feel like you need more assistance, and that's not unusual. And so if you'd like to gain mastery over anxiety, if it's okay, I'd like to show you some more steps so that you can make it happen. Because you can have mastery over your anxiety. And you can get additional step-by-step instructions on how to take back control and to gain mastery over your anxiety easily and in a timely manner. And the great thing about the Mastery Over Anxiety program that I have is that you'll be able to take back control of yourself, your life, your work, and to create the life of your dreams. You see, by having overcome my anxiety, then I've been able to do a lot of things that previously I couldn't do. For example, I used to have a panic attack if there was a spider in the room. Now I just capture it on a broom or in a jar and just take it outside and let it go. I've learned how to do it and to be in some ways more humane. Not only to the spider, but also to me. And I've learned how to be able to present and get up, because I love now getting up and presenting and talking to people about the idea of overcoming anxiety, not just coping with it. Because I was able to overcome my fears, my anxiety, my panic, and my nervousness. And so I have a Mastery Over Anxiety program, and it covers 8 sessions. And those sessions are about getting to know your anxiety and then coping, learning to resolve the cause, checking that has the anxiety gone, and if not, continuing to resolve, becoming mindfully emotional and solving your emotions, dealing with your emotions, because often we don't deal with the emotions, and that can affect the ability to gain mastery over your anxiety. About creating excitement, so you have excitement rather than fear and nervousness. We'll review your progress. And then there's long-term mastery, how to make it so you have long-term mastery over your anxiety. And this is a program that I run for people who are committed to really wanting to get over their anxiety. To get on that program, though, I have what's called a complimentary discovery session. And this session aims at identifying whether you are suitable for the program. You see, I don't take everybody on this program. I only take those people who are suitable. So we explore in the discovery session whether the program is suitable for you. I give you an experience of creating change and overcoming some anxiety. We create an individual plan for you so that you can gain mastery over your anxiety. Plus, you get a number of bonuses from the program. Things like you learn self-hypnosis. You learn about what I call the safe place, so that wherever you are, you can go in there. You learn about how your mind works and how you think, so that you can really start to get better control. So, for example, if you were presenting, you begin to understand how to better be able to present, how to prepare your presentations in the way that works for you. If you're learning something, how you learn, so that you get rid of your anxiety. We also look at other ebooks that I give you to read that you get to keep around understanding about anxiety and how to overcome it as you move forward. And the discovery session can be done over the telephone. So in this way, you don't even have to travel. You can just do it over the telephone, and in the hour session that we have, you begin to understand all about the Mastery Over Anxiety program, the cost and what it would cost you. And I want you to think about, even before you apply, is, well, what is your anxiety costing you now? You see, I travelled to Egypt from Australia. It's a long way. It costs a fair bit of money. And I didn't go in the pyramids. So what did it cost me? Well, it means I have to fly back to Egypt to be able to go into the pyramid again. So at least that's several thousand, if not more, dollars of money to be able to go and achieve the dream. So not achieving my dream cost me many thousands of dollars. And so it's about you thinking, what is the cost to your money, to your life, to your family, to your work, that your anxiety is causing? And so there's a person, Bernadette Jarvis, just an example of one of the people who I helped. And she said, David, what you have done with releasing my anxiety is amazing. I wish I had found you sooner rather than just putting up with my anxiety. And that's the thing, is a lot of people just think, I can only cope. That's what they're told. They're put on meds, or they're doing some psychology type work, and they just get told by their person who they're going through, yep, you know what, you can only cope. The message I want to get out there is that is no longer true. There's a person, Martin Seligman, and he wrote a book, or his latest book is on Flourish, and he talks about the idea of you can overcome things. So that idea of just coping, that's old. It's no longer relevant. If that's what people around you are saying, then go and find those people, such as myself, who can help you to recognize that you can gain mastery over your anxiety. So here's what I'm providing you today. It's an opportunity that if you are selected for the program, that you can go through those 8 sessions and you can gain mastery. And the reason I'm providing this opportunity is because my mission is to help those with anxiety to be free of it. Now, of course, I'd prefer if you came to me, but I'm not even fussed with that. If you find there's someone else that you know and they believe that they can help you to overcome anxiety, then go with them, because what I want is for people to overcome their anxiety. And for those who go through my program, I'm looking for people to spread the word, to get it out to others so that they can get the information. You see, I've talked to many people about the idea of, do you know what, you can overcome your anxiety? And so many people have said to me, I didn't know that. Well, that's what I want to do. I want to get that word out there. And that's why I'm offering this program. And I want you to be successful by doing what is needed so you can create the changes, because in many ways, your success is my success. As you are successful in this, I feel good, besides you feeling good. And so only selected people do qualify. So if you are interested in having a discovery session and you would like to see if you're appropriate to be able to get on this program, then by all means apply. And you can apply at my website, www.theeyesofhorus, so it's plural, theeyesofhorus.com.au/APPL-mastery. So that address is on the website or on the slide. So if you want to be able to overcome your anxiety and not just put up with it, then first of all, please do the tips that I've shown you, the power pose, the mirror, and talking to yourself, because that's a big part of the start, because that's what I get people to do at the start of my program anyway, because I need you to start showing that you can take back control so you can then master your anxiety and overcome your anxiety. So again, if you want to, please apply. And those who I believe qualify, I'll contact you within 3 days of your applying, and then we can organise a time and date for the discovery session so you can learn. And even after the discovery session, there is no obligation. There is no obligation to go with me whatsoever. Have the discovery session and see what you think. So in closing, I just want to reiterate that the idea is that you can learn to overcome your anxiety, not just cope with it. Yes, you need to learn tips to be able to take back control first. And once you're doing that, then you can move forward in gaining mastery. And as you gain mastery, you find that anxiety is no longer that thing to fear. Instead, it is a wonderful thing that's just telling you something. And as you take notice of it, you can then overcome it. So please have a good day. And I'll talk to you later.